Welcome into Up in the Rafters, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this college basketball season. I'm Taylor Vippolis hosting this, and as always, joining me, he's a national champion, the Final Four's most outstanding player, a Carolina basketball legend, Joel Berry. Joel, Carolina beats up on NC State 97-73. For me, this was a game that served as a reminder for as bad as it can seem at times for Carolina basketball. They're in the middle of a season of struggles. They're not NC State.
Yeah.
What were your biggest takeaways from this game?
Man, I loved every single bit of it. I loved it. I loved it right from the jump when we started pulling away. That was my type of game. As fans, we've had way too many close games. And it was finally one of those games where we could sit back, have a little wine, have a little bourbon, whatever you like, and be able to enjoy just watching some. They still had some bonehead mistakes, but watching basketball carefree without your blood pressure going through the roof. So I enjoyed it. Secondly, I think we all got a glimpse of what it could look like when we allow the students to be on the front rows. We got to have it. Like, if you want to come to the game, we can have front row seats still, put them a little closer to the like how Clemson does it, but we need to have our students around the lower bowl and get them, because it was rowdy last night. It was rowdy. I loved it. Now let's get to the game. Carolina, it was all around a great game. Guys stepped up in big ways. Cade Tyson knocked down 2 threes, which was kind of, that was good to see. But they dominated in all facets of the game. Points in the paint, Carolina knocking down threes. The ball movement was there. They had 17 assists. I mean, there's nothing really that I can say went wrong for Carolina in this game. They were in control every step of the way. And it was outside of the SMU game at home. It was another one of those complete games that you've seen from Carolina.
If you could pick a game that's going to be a stress-free game for Carolina on the schedule, I think part of the Duke rivalry is the fun that comes with the stress that you get in those games. But if a Carolina fan had to pick a game that's going to be stress-free, I think they would pick the NC State game, because there's that certain feeling when Carolina's up by 30 against a team like NC State, and the talking that fan base does. And early in that first half, the comparison started to go to the games that you were a part of when you guys beat up on NC State, and it did feel like it was getting to that point with Carolina leading from start to finish. Carolina leading by 30 points. I'm pretty sure they got it up to 30 after the first possession of the second half. Carolina now has won both regular season games against NC State in 15 out of the last 21 seasons. So I know there's always some debate whether it's a rivalry or not. I think it's a rivalry just because of the dislike and the hate you kind of get from both sides. But in terms of a rivalry, it's about as one-sided a rivalry.
It sure is. I don't even have to say much. I let the statistics speak for itself. I don't need to say anything. Everyone knows where I stand. It's just, I get it. It's the triangle. It's NC State right down the road. But hey, we let the game talk.
Yeah, I believe it was Seth Trimble in the post game who was talking about losing to NC State in the ACC tournament last year, and how that kind of gave NC State fans a lot of reasons to start talking. And in the post game, he was like, we want to give them a reason to stop talking. And what they did on Wednesday was a great start to that. And yes, they have that win in the ACC tournament from last year. But again, 15 out of the last 21 seasons, Carolina swept the regular season meetings. It's most likely going to take what we saw in the Final Four against Duke, or a game in the national championship where NC State has to win that to kind of reverse or give their fans something to talk about and be able to hold over Carolina, because it certainly is not going to be just an ACC tournament in a one-off year for Carolina.
This thing, you and I will be long gone before this whole thing gets reversed. And I don't even know if it will get reversed then. Let's stop it. Let's stop it.
They need they need like an Amazon CEO type money to get brought into the program, and then all of a sudden you're looking up the transfer portal, and the top 6 guys are all going to NC State because they're just funneling money. But
that's
I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, it may. You never know, but I don't think that's going to happen.
You mentioned the general admission crowd, where Carolina opens the doors and allows any fans admission to the game, even without a ticket, because of the winter storm and people having difficulties getting to Chapel Hill and the road conditions being unsafe. But what you see happen is a lot of students packing into the lower bowl, fans that really wanted to be at the game, getting into the game. How did you see the team kind of feed off that energy to start?
It was, it was probably one of the first games where I really saw like there being a lot of excitement. Now I get that has to, that translates from the game, them being in control the entire game, really from start to finish. But you can feel, you feel that crowd, you feel the energy. And sometimes that energy gets you going when, especially when it's so close and it's so intimate right there on the floor. Like you really feel that. And I saw a lot of posts. Like I know I don't go by social media a lot. But I did see a lot of feedback that was like, that's the type of energy we need every single time in the Smith Center. And I'm like, yes, that's what we need. Look, I'm all for the folks that want to sit on the front row. I'm all for it. A lot of them are people who give to the program. I'm all for that. Let's put a row in the front. Let them have their, have their little bottle service, bring drinks, whatever. But right behind there, let's have the fans going crazy. I just think it's time. Coach Davis talked about, let's get away from the traditional way. Let's look at a new way of being able to bring some different type of energy to the Dean Smith Center, whether that be where it is now or moving off campus to another facility. Regardless of whatever it is, let's make that change because it's needed.
Yeah, I'm going to go to one of the questions we got from a fan on Instagram now because it makes the most sense. But that's kind of been part of the conversation with moving the team off campus. And there's been kind of some pushback to that where it's like, no, Carolina has something good in the Dean Dome. But then you have moments like Wednesday against NC State, and Amy Nicole 0427 asked, do you think the atmosphere last night will impact the decision on location of a new arena? Because right now it seems like the problem is getting the people that you promised tickets to, getting them in a place that's kind of suitable for them. And one of the things that you can do in an off-campus arena is build a stadium that has the suite level where you could put the big money people, but then in this new arena, you could pack the lower bowl and create a much more hostile environment. So where are you kind of in the debate of new arena or trying to fix what the Dean Dome currently is with the limitations it does have?
Yeah, I mean, the Smith Center is so historical. If there was a way to try to, refurbish it, I would definitely go that route, because you also look at, if you go off campus, like yesterday wouldn't have happened if you go off campus. The students wouldn't have been able to have access to walk to the game and be able to get into the game to be able to create that type of environment. So it's a pros and a cons to it. It will take time to redo the Smith Center, which is like, does a summer give you enough time to be able to make those changes and still get ready for the next season? Because it's not like, in Chapel Hill, it doesn't have a professional team where you can move the game to to the NBA arena or something. So those are all the logistics you have to think about. If it does stay, even with where the kid or the students are sitting. Like I like the one behind the home bench or on the same side as the home bench that goes all the way up. But then your other student section is tucked in the corner where they have no impact. So like if you end up doing this,
or also in the 300 level.
Yeah, all the way up in it. Like, how can I affect the game? I'm gonna lose my voice. And it doesn't have an effect. So even just moving the fans or the students behind the visitors basket, makes a difference. You still want to cater to those high ticket price people that want to be close to the action. There's a way to do it. It just depends on, you got to figure out the logistics. But like last night, if you're off campus, something like that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I think my biggest argument for the new arena would be you could still take the banners with you. Those banners could still come down, and
you gotta take those.
Where your national those aren't exclusive to that location, because I've kind of heard that where you've had so much history and all the banners. The banners.
Leave the banners. No, you gotta take those.
No, I mean there's been some conversations where people make it sound like the banners are exclusive to that building, where it's like,
oh no.
Those come with Carolina no matter where they are.
As easy as they can go up, they can come down.
And the other thing is, if you do have some hesitations towards building a new arena, and in this new structure, the new arena does have a majority of lower level seating for the students.
Yeah.
I think you would see very early on the home court advantage that kind of plays, to where if you do have any concerns, if Carolina starts winning at like a 95% rate at home games, and the starts to games are a lot more similar to what you saw against NC State, when you have that type of environment and that type of crowd for your team to feed off of, any concerns kind of go away really quickly.
Yeah.
When your team comes out looking like that on most nights.
And you could, like I said, you can see it in their body language. Like regardless of it being a dominant game, you could see the smiles on their faces. You could see, like, I just love seeing the fans like getting up and standing up and cheering, and the players are looking right at them dead in their eyes. And like you can see that energy from the crowd go right into the players. And it was beautiful to see, because it's that interaction between the fan and the player. And that's what they're there for. So I love it. And then I also think that the box seats will invite more prominent people to want to come to the Carolina games. Like a lot of them don't want to sit on the front row, because in the Smith Center, you do have just open access, which you can't have 24, or 2-hour security on the front row at a basketball game. So you'll be able to put those people up in the boxes. Now you really get some big time people coming to the game, which is all about notoriety, right? It's all about putting the brand out there. That's what it's about. We're not in the age anymore where you can just let the NC speak for itself. You want to see people coming to the game. You want to see the Taylor Swift type effect, where the camera's always going up to the boxes to see who's up there. Like that's what I want to see. So I think it's a win-win to be able to move some of those people up to the boxes and get the fans down there to get it a little bit crazier.
One of the players that did a great job feeding off that energy, and even going back to the Syracuse game when he did it with one eye, Jae'Lyn Withers. Jae'Lyn Withers insertion into the starting lineup. Carolina trying to see what works, what doesn't work. At this point in the season, it might feel like grasping for straws at times, but when you see what Jae'Lyn Withers can do and positively impact the game the past 2 games, it's hard to argue Carolina turning to him to try to be an answer. Why do you think Carolina has seen more success with some of their bigger lineups?
Well, I just think you have to have bigger guys on the floor, because then that trickles down to some, other things happening that you just can't make up for without size. The rebounding, just the just even the athleticism at the rim, just being able to, if you're not blocking shots, even changing shots. Withers is a guy that can step out, and yes, his shot might not be respectable, but you at least have to get out there and guard him because he is mobile enough to get into those handoffs, get out of it, make out of it. I know, sometimes he makes some plays that make you want to pull your hair out, but at the same time, he is a mobile four that also brings athleticism that you have to have. Taylor, to be quite honest, I know a lot of people, and I even said it, that Ian Jackson should start, but I'm looking at this lineup and what they've in these 2 games. I think this is the way you have to go. I think bringing Seth and Ian off the bench is being able to change it up and being able to bring some fire off the bench. I just honestly like the way the rotations have been. And I haven't said that all season, but I like the starting lineup of Elliott, RJ, Drake, Van Allen, Lubin, and Jae'Lyn, and bringing Seth and Ian off the bench. I think that's a recipe for success for them moving forward.
Yeah, with Ian Jackson, we kind of talked about how maybe the moment was getting a little too big for him when he's moving up the scouting reports after, a stretch of games where he's averaging over like 18 points per game and was lighting up the box scores every night, to then hit a wall in his freshman season to where he was struggling to reach double-digit scorings. And now you have the past 2 games, Ian Jackson with back-to-back games with double-digit scoring off the bench. What have you kind of seen from him as he comes off the bench? Maybe just being more comfortable.
Yeah, and he alluded to it in his press conference or in his interview at Syracuse that he realized, like, once he was on top of the scouting report, he had to change it up. He had to do something differently. He had to change up, do the curveball, from just being straight line straight to the basket, because teams now understand, like, him full force to the basket, you can't stop him. He's too athletic, too quick, and just too springy. So I just, coming off the bench kind of gives you a chance to gauge how the game is being played. I think a lot of guys now in this era of basketball, and it's easy to be that way. Look, you're a 5-star, you're a McDonald's All-American. You get fascinated with starting. But it's not about starting. You can play starter minutes without starting. But being able to see how the game is being played, the pace, getting yourself kind of ready for the action, it just gives you a chance to get revved up. And I just think that has helped him to your point, you have this, you rise up, and then now the teams are like, all right, we gotta stop this young man. Now it gives him a chance to kind of see things from a different perspective, and kind of gives him a timeout, give him a timeout, let him get his confidence back. And now you see, with him coming off the bench, that confidence is back and rolling.
I was laughing before because you mentioned he's got to change it up, where he's putting down the one too many times. He's throwing too many fastballs. And it made me think of there's this Yankee pitcher this year, Tommy Canley. He threw 56 consecutive changeups.
What?
They just knew the changeup was coming, and they couldn't do anything.
56. Come on, man.
I looked up this stat, a little aside for this podcast, but I have this stat. There was 257 pitchers this season who have thrown at least 750 pitches and at least one changeup. Only 6 of them have thrown the changeup more than 1/3 of the time. Only 2 of them have thrown the changeup more than half the time. One of them is Trevor Richards at 53.6%. The other, Tommy Canley, 73.1% of his pitches were changeups.
My man, that's going too far. If I know it's coming, then it's just like, all right, it defeats the purpose.
But with Ian Jackson's big scoring night on the bench, I have a couple stats here from the Carolina game where Carolina establishes a season high in ACC games in field goal shooting, 57.4%, rebound margin 40 to 21, second chance points 21, and bench points 43, with a majority of those being Ian Jackson, 43 bench points. What does that do for a team to get that kind of production and that punch off your bench?
Yeah, I mean it's good for your team to have. You want that. You need that that punch off the bench, especially on the scoring end, because usually when you go to the bench, there's a little drop off. And you just didn't see that in this game. Everyone was on their P's and Q's, and having that type of production is important. But that's why I pointed out earlier that just having Ian Jackson come off the bench and having Seth come off the bench gives you the ability to be able to do that. Before, when you had Ian in the starting lineup, you really didn't have that scoring punch coming off the bench, and he brings that. So having that type of production is important. Now, we're not going to get 43 points from the bench every single game. Like that's hard to do, but I think they do average like 22 and a half points off the bench, which you want that punch. But it was amazing. What stood out to me though was the 21 second chance points, just because Carolina just hasn't had those opportunities to do much of that this year with the lack of offensive rebounding, and being able to have those second chance points is very important. And they knew they utilized it, because NC State isn't a big team. They don't have massive guys inside. So they utilized it and they did it well. But like I said, you look at the stats, you can just see where the dominance was.
I will say 43 bench points. It's a lot easier to get bench points when you're up 20, 25, 30 points in a game.
Oh yeah, it's a lot easier. I mean, everyone's coming off the bench. Let me get a piece of it. Let me get a piece. But it doesn't happen often. That's very impressive.
You're getting off the bench thinking like, hey, I just got to throw something up right now.
It seemed like it'll just go in. Literally, like you said earlier, it did feel like once it got to 40 to 18, I'm like, this might turn into 2017 Carolina versus NC State. But obviously they let off the gas. We kept going. I'm playing. They kept on the gas.
I thought one of the interesting things that was mentioned this week is that Harrison Ingram was back this week in Chapel Hill around the team. RJ Davis in his postgame mentioned that having Ingram back reminded him of what he brought to the table, reminded the team what he brought to the table, and how he competed every day. Could it be that simple? Is it a coincidence that UNC came ready with this level of attention to detail when Harrison Ingram comes back, and they're ready to compete from the jump?
I mean, it's good to see. It's kind of good to see a guy that comes in, comes back, and you just remember the good times. I think that's where RJ is. It's kind of like, it's been a struggle for him. I mean, he decided to come back where he could have, hit the portal. What else could he have accomplished? He made it to a national championship game. I know he could have, the goal is to win it. But when you look at him individually, I mean, he's done everything for the program and more. And so, you get a guy to come back and just the season hasn't fared out the way that he would have liked it in his last year. So being able to get a guy back and like Harrison Ingram and relive those good times, it does give you a good little aura, in the locker room, and all the coaches as well. But Taylor, I keep going back to it. When you run out of that tunnel at the beginning of the game, and those students were going crazy because the chancellor came out and said class is canceled. Like they were just cheering because they're like, we don't get this opportunity. Like that type of energy, you just can't reciprocate. And it's just, you can't. I think that's what really did it, was them running out of that tunnel and seeing all of those kids probably going buck wild because they got an opportunity that even their parents, if their parents went to Carolina, some of their parents didn't even get that opportunity.
A quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you could visit Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. And if not, no worries. You can go online to johnnytshirt.com. They have everything that the Carolina fan could possibly want. The hats, the t-shirts, the jerseys, you name it, they've got it. It's great people, great prices, great customer service. They currently have a bunch of Carolina baseball stuff as the baseball season is getting ready to get started. And don't forget, Carolina premium members save 10% off their orders. I actually found a stat during that read. This is the third time that UNC opened the doors and allowed any fan admission to a game. They did it February 10th, 1994, in a 95-89 win over Maryland. And then they did it January 27th, 2000, a 75-63 win over Maryland. Both times it was Maryland.
Maryland, like, are you serious?
For some reason, I thought the 2014 game against Duke was an open admission game, but I think that game just got rescheduled from a snowstorm. But that was a game that I remember thinking, this is the loudest I've ever seen it for the Carolina Duke game. But we have fan submitted questions. Thank you to all the fans that submitted questions on Instagram. The first question comes from Chief Tito, and he says, how does UNC keep the momentum going into the next 5 games?
Yeah, you just have to bottle up, and you have to be aware of what has given you success in the past games, and try to replicate that. And I just think this is the time of the season where things are clicking a little bit better. Guys are understanding what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. I will nitpick and say that, one of the areas that they that gave me some worry was just the turnovers sometimes, and the plays where they're going in and they just don't know what they're doing, or seem like they don't know what they're doing, and then it just turns into a turnover. But outside of that, you just have to look at what you've been doing these past 2 games, and try to replicate that moving forward. And like I said, I think part of that is this lineup that they're running, and these having Ian and Seth come off the bench. I think this is the lineup they need to stick with moving forward.
Next question comes from Wesley Combs 16. How big of a role do you think Jae'Lyn Withers will play for this team down the stretch?
Yeah, I think he plays a pretty big role, because I think the 4 spot in Coach Davis's system is very important. Being able to have a guy like him that's like he's athletic, he's mobile, he's a little bit stronger than he presents. And I just think they need him. They need that athleticism. They need that mobile 4 that can also pass and play make out of that 4 position. So we'll see. I mean, in the past, he just hasn't been able to put things together for long stretches of time. So hopefully something in his game is starting to click, and he's starting to understand his role a little bit better.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Congruity. Congruity is the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners, payroll, HR, and employee benefit needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. Email is matt@congruityhr.com. That email again is matt@congruityhr.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. And then the final question coming from H Hill 94. How do you think Carolina's lack of quad 1 wins impacts their chances for the tournament? Especially they don't really have many coming down the stretch. It's basically going to be Duke, and then if you make it far in the ACC tournament, maybe one of those games late.
Yeah, I just think at this point it's controlling what you can control, and what happened in the past, it's now over. But it's hard to it's difficult to see, and for the committee to look over that quad one those games. It's hard for them to look over it. If they can win out and then go into that Duke game and be able to get that win, being two, having two quad one wins will look a lot better than having one. But as of now, that one quad win doesn't look too good. You know, the metrics are there with having a really good strength of schedule, but you got to have those quad one wins, especially when you have those many opportunities. So as of now, it's just controlling the controllables, winning out, winning that Duke game, and then hopefully pairing that with the strength of schedule, which is on their side.
Yeah, my favorite thing in those bracketology segments when they're talking North Carolina is before they get to the but they haven't won many, it's they've played a ton of quad one games.
Yeah.
They're like nobody's played more quad one games in North Carolina. And it's like, you know
Right.
what? Carolina has played a lot of quad one games.
Yeah. You know, you want to be able to have some more of those opportunities, especially, or not more opportunities, but win those opportunities. And you know, it's unfortunate, but like I said, the good thing is they're still right there on the bubble and have that chance to win out. So you avoid the landmines, and then you go ahead and try to take advantage of that opportunity with Duke being your last quad one opportunity. So we'll see what ends up happening, but they still have a chance. They're still alive, and that's all you can ask for.
Carolina back in action. They have the Saturday and then Monday turnaround. Saturday, 4 p.m. tip from the Smith Center in Chapel Hill against Virginia on ESPN2. And then Monday, they will travel to Tallahassee to take on Florida State on ESPN, and that will be a 7 p.m. tip.
Sneaky hard game.
Yeah. We will be back next week to break it all down. Joel, man, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Yes, sir. Go Heels.
Perfect, man.